Okay, so welcome back everyone for the afternoon session. We are going to have a fireside chat now. There's no fire, but there'll be plenty of chatting with Krishna Bhagwatula. So I'm really thankful that Krishna agreed to come for this event. He has an incredibly busy schedule, but he found time. So he's an EVP and CTO at the NBA. He's been there since 2017 and has led all kinds of digital transformations, which we'll hear about in the chat. Before that, he was the CTO of NBC Digital. Again, transformed things there. Before that, he was a VP of engineering at WebMD. So he's had a long and distinguished career in tech and now sports and tech. So Krishna, welcome.
Thanks, Vishnu. Great to be here. Can everybody hear me? Okay, great.
So welcome. And as I said, there's so many digital transformations that you have led at the NBA. So we'll talk about a bunch of them. So let's start with League Pass. Can you tell us what the journey has been and what kind of changes you've seen in League Pass?
Sure. First, let me just say that there are few better things. I think I was actually talking to a couple of folks during lunch, and there are few better things to do than on a beautiful fall afternoon being at a college campus. So this is really amazing. So I'm actually super energized to be here. As I was telling Vishal earlier, I actually love these settings. I think they're so intimate and authentic. And I think Vishal and the rest of the team that put this up, amazing job. I mean, these are the kind of things that I think really get me energized as well.
Thanks.
So I actually go back with more energy than I came. So going back to League Pass.
Just check it in the mail.
There you go. There you go. Going back to League Pass, right? First of all, let me just talk about what the NBA is about, right? Our mission statement at the top level is to inspire and connect people everywhere through the power of basketball. That's really what we aspire to do, right? And technology is we think of technology as a medium to actually be able to take the incredibly beautiful game of basketball and showcase it across our fan base. Speaking about our fan base, right, we have a very, very diverse fan base. When you compare it to the other US sports leagues at least, right? We have an incredibly young and diverse fan base. So that's super important. And not only that, they're also incredibly tech savvy. So we've got to meet our fans on the platforms that they consume content on. So that's where League Pass fits in, right? If you think about the traditional TV experience, it's a 10-foot screen or whatever you want to call it, from a 10-foot distance. And most TV consumption or a lot of TV consumption is really social, right? You're doing it with friends or family or at a restaurant or a bar with other folks that are interested in consuming the game. When you come down to like mobile devices or tablets, it's a highly individualized and personalized experience, right? You want to watch the sport on your own terms, right? Vishal knows this. I'm a rabid cricket fan who wakes up at 2 a.m. in the morning, just like Vishal, and watches cricket matches, right? And when I'm watching them, I actually want to interact with the game, understand the game, and try to get stats about the game and so on and so forth as well, right? So that's what we are aspiring to do with League Pass as well, is not only just meet the fans on the platforms that they use to consume content, but also be able to deliver experiences in a way that resonates with them, right? And variety of ways that we do this, right? At a most simplistic level, it could be in language content. So we within League Pass, which by the way is a subscription service, right? Which gives you access to all NBA games across the season. So right now you can actually subscribe to League Pass and personalize the experience by choosing three languages for now and soon to be more. And then, Spanish, Portuguese, you can actually, or Korean, these are the three languages that we started off with. And you can personalize the content in these ways. As you engage more and more with the content, we rely on a combination of implicit and explicit data points to build content that's more personalized to you. Implicit being, actually explicit being, you've stated that you are a fan of the Lakers and, LeBron James is your favorite player. And implicit is, but you want a lot of Warriors games. So what kind of content do we actually push to you, right? It's really, is it the Warriors games or is it the LeBron and Lakers games? So again, those are the kind of implicit content recommendations that we are able to make with ePass. And it's an evolving journey, right? Like all things in tech, we're never done. It's constantly evolving as tech platforms evolve. And we want to figure out what kind of experiences really resonate with our fans. And we want to be the first adapters to be out there on the platforms that the fans are using to consume content.
So do you have any early indications on what kind of personalized content that you're generating? Fans are excited about?
Yeah. I mean, just going back to the example I just gave, right? If you explicitly state that you're a fan of a team, I'm going to use the LeBron and the Miami Heat example, right? A few years ago, if you had explicitly stated that you're a fan of the Heat, but as LeBron transitioned from the Heat to the Cavaliers to the Lakers, you started consuming first more Cavaliers content, followed by Lakers content. That's an implicit inference that we can make, and then we can actually give you more LeBron content depending on the team that he's at, right? Again, it's purely an example, but that's the kind of stuff that we can give you. Again, if you are consuming a lot of highlights, we can actually recommend content that's actually packaged into highlight segments. We're experimenting with in-language highlight segments that are auto-generated using AI that are personalized to your needs, right? But again, the idea is to make sure that we are rewarding you for being a fan, right? We are creating that delightful moment for you that when you open the app, you're like, wow, this app actually knows me and I'm actually getting the content that I intend to consume.
So switching gears, I mean, we'll go back and forth, but from the point of view of let's, we're done with fans for now, but let's go to the teams and things like quote optics, which a lot of people may not be aware of, but can you tell a little bit about what it does and how teams are using that?
Yeah. So let me just speak about the game itself, right? And I'm sure lot of sports fans here, I'm guessing. Of course, it's a sports AI forum, right? A lot of data geeks here too, right? I always maintain that there is an extremely thin line between being a data geek and a sports fanatic. Because I think the two have a really symbiotic relationship. If you're a super sports fan, you're obsessing over data. And Vishal is laughing because I know the kind of data he obsesses about and the kind of sports he obsesses about. But that's very symbiotic, and you're constantly using that data to validate your support of a player or a team, and win those debates with your friends, right? So that's kind of, we've taken that concept almost to the next level. Okay? We started off, again, this is even pre-quote optics years, right? We started off by having like high frame rate cameras, multiple positions in the arenas. First of all, firstly, it was actually not ultra high frame rate, but like, 25, 30 frames per second, capturing plays. We took all of that data, put it through machine learning models. And essentially what we did is we made a machine understand the game faster, right? And it gives a lot of traditional, quote unquote, traditional insights, right? Like, number of, I guess, number of shots you've successfully made, the number of rebounds a player has had. So those are kind of quote unquote traditional stats. Then as we started churning and analyzing the data, right, we were able to come up with this more advanced stats, almost like the intangible stats that you can't measure in a game, right? It's like the number of charges dropped. Who's a player that actually draws a lot of charges, deflections, loose ball recoveries, right? These are not traditional stats, but they actually give you that intrinsic value that you can measure in a play. So we came up with this notion of what we call hustle stats, right? And then the next evolution really is code optics. So at the core of it, code optics captures millions of data points that we are using these cameras to capture in terms of action on the court. We are actually processing all of that data, and then we are measuring it and giving back to the teams. Right? So at the end of every game, we actually package all of that data and then send it back to the teams, and the teams are free to use that data as they choose. Right? Like sprint velocity, right? How fast is a player moving on the court? What is their shooting from a specific position on the court, right? What's their success rate for shooting? So those are, and then what is defensive impact, right? For instance, defensive impact is, what can a defensive team, what kind of an impact can a defensive position or a play have on the scoring of the opposing team? So those are the kind of quote unquote intangible stats that we are able to measure and report back using systems like code optics. It doesn't stop at just data that coaches are looking at or players are looking at to improve their player performance. It can actually be incorporated into graphic overlays that we're doing when we're presenting the game on broadcast, right? Like ball velocity, for instance. What's the apex of the ball when Steph is shooting the 3-pointer, right? And what's the distance and what's the curvature of the ball as it's going into the basket? And those are the kind of things that we are able to measure using tools like code optics.
So, do you know teams that are actually using that for
100%. So in many cases, they actually augment the data that we provide them with analytics that we collect on their own as well. But this is like the baseline data that we give back.
So this is sort of a service that NBA is providing to the teams?
Yes.
And after every game, it's reported to all teams.
Yes.
So it's sort of like open data.
Yes.
So, this came up in the panel this morning, that open data would be really useful for researchers to work with. Are there any plans to make it available for researchers? This is the perfect.
There are. I mean, certainly we can have. So again, I'll step back a little bit, right? So the NBA runs a bunch of innovation programs where we actually send our data sets out or share our data sets with third parties and ask them to innovate or come up with solutions to problems using those data sets, right? So we have, for the last, I want to say 3 or 4 years, Arup, you can keep me honest. We have run a program that we call Launchpad for the last few years, where we actually set out a set of challenges, right? We say, here's a bunch of questions or the challenges that we have, and we invite open participation from companies or startups, or just interested parties like folks potentially in this room, right? To come up with solutions to those problems. So they can come up with a concept and we can augment with data from systems that we use to help them iterate on that problem and come up with a more meaningful solution based on their data. So those are the kind of programs that we have in place. Again, there's a new Launchpad challenge that's going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for it.
Great. So So you're a data provider, another data provider that came up a lot in the earlier panel was Hawkeye.
Yeah.
So can you tell a little bit about how Hawkeye data has been used in
Yeah,
the NBA and the teams?
yeah, so we've used, talked about these high frame rate cameras and so on and so forth, right? So we had a provider that we've been working with, for the last few years, that essentially uses, center of mass, tracking technology. So basically when the players or the ball is on, players on court, and they're playing basketball, right? We can map out the XYZ coordinates of the players and the ball. We use those insights to capture plays, right? And those plays could be basketball plays, it could be referee calls, it could be defensive positions, offensive positions that are working, so on and so forth. So we kind of sort of started this partnership with Hawkeye a couple of years ago, because we wanted to augment our center of mass technology with essentially what we call pose data. So Hawkeye cameras give us the ability to sort of capture pose, if you will, which gives an additional dimension to a player movement, for instance, right? Hawkeye cameras give us skeletal tracking capabilities, so it's not just the position of the player on the court when they're actually making a shot, but how their skeletal position is, and that gives us data around, what is the impact with which they're taking off the ground and jumping for a dunk versus a three-pointer. It gives us insights into injuries, right? Player performance, right? It's like what kind of plays are injury prone, what can you do in terms of learnings from this data to improve player performance, and so on and so forth. So that's where Hawkeye is coming in. The other capability is automating officiating. Right? At the end of the day, again, I'm sure there are basketball fans here. So when you talk about goaltending, right? Goaltending is a very subjective and a hard call to make, because at the end of the day, you've got to be able to measure the apex of the trajectory of the ball. So Hawkeye gives us sub-millimeter ball tracking capabilities, which enable us to sort of accurately pinpoint the trajectory of the ball, and make the right call in terms of goaltending, right? At the end of the day, if you think about it, it's of course, it's transparency around the game. We want to make sure that the rationale for the calls that are being made are as transparent as possible. And technology like Hawkeye is a vehicle for us to give that transparency to the players, to the coaches, and our fans.
Yeah, well, so if you say Hawkeye and you ask any cricket fan, the one thing that comes to mind is DRS.
Yeah.
Right? So again, it's about transparency and decision making. So the reps system that you have, what is it?
Sure. So first, let me, I don't know if everybody in the audience is familiar with REPS. So REPS stands for Referee Engagement and Performance System. So a couple of years ago, we thought that we could actually use tech to improve officiating by this taking all the data that was already available to us, right? We made significant investments in stuff like the replay center. I mean, many of you have probably heard about the replay center, right? Hard to make calls, they're sent back to the replay center in Secaucus, and where the folks in Secaucus are actually looking at ultra slow-mo replays of the play, and then making a call based on their analysis of that situation. So we thought, okay, you know what, how about we actually take this and actually get the referees access to this data to help with the officiating. So by the way, we're in the School of Journalism, right? So you guys are familiar, or at least some of you may be familiar with content management systems, right? At the heart of it, what's a content management system? You're creating content, and then you're going through a bunch of editorial reviews where people can redline on that comment, on that content, comment on it, and make sure that you get to a final product that everybody's satisfied with. So we have used a similar model. I hope nobody from the NBA is listening because I'm probably butchering the example here. But essentially we took that concept and we said, okay, you know what? Let's actually offer all of these data points to our referees and help referee managers, and we call them development advisors. We said, let's actually give them the chance to sort of comment on the plays that they're capturing, give their insights, and be able to share that very quickly. So we've almost created a combination of a CMS with the content being the plays that we are capturing, and a social system because the referees can actually share that content very easily, almost in real time. Immediately after the game, we release that content and then they can comment on it. The objective is to improve that rating or improve officiating, right? Not only are we validating or invalidating the calls that we have made, we're also trying to capture the calls that were not made, right? The equally important, right? And we want to make sure that the referees have access to this data so that they are continually developing and improving and improving officiating. Again, the goal being transparency and improve the game. Right? So, officiating will be fun.
So another thing sort of related to, sort of influx of data. I've been sort of experiencing that in cricket, but in basketball or cricket or any other sport, it's a very sort of tradition-rich sport with a rich history. And how are the players, the coaches taking to data? How are they reacting to it now? How has the adoption been?
So we've been capturing data for a long time, right? I mean, just a stat nugget that I'd like to throw out there is like we have essentially captured stats from all the seasons going back to the 1946-47 season, right? And again, using the tooling that was available to us in that time. And we have created a publicly available system called NBA Stats, right? All of you can, we said publicly accessible, right? If you go to NBA.com/stats, you can actually get access to all the stats from all seasons starting from the 46-47 season. I believe it's like 4.7 quadrillion combinations of stats that we have collected into the system. And it's by logging the plays, making sure that we have actually captured the individual player stats, team stats, and so on and so forth. Again, the examples I mentioned previously, right? Traditional stats were actually developed based on having access to this information. As the game evolved and we actually put more complex cameras in place, high-frame rate cameras in place, captured more data points, we got more nuanced statistics that would, what I call these intangible stats, and then ultimately resulting in code optics, which players and coaches are using, right? They're used by players, by coaches, by scouts, and by the super fans, right? The data nerds who are basketball fans, they love this data. So it's not just I guess players, for instance. It's you want to feed the entire ecosystem that's hungry for data to analyze the game, right?
So, but the coaches and all players are taking.
They are absolutely.
You mentioned the super fans love it. So do you actively sort of track fan engagement, and what kind of programs do you have to increase fan engagement?
Yeah, we do. So fan engagement is interesting, right? again, going back to, I guess, fandom and the number of fans that we have, not just in the US, but across the world, right? I mentioned we have an incredibly young and tech-savvy fan base. If you look at the data behind it, right, we have over 1.5 billion fans across the world. And the data point that gives us confidence that that's a good number is that we have 2.5 billion unique engagements on social media with NBA-related content. So that's, and then when you think about it and you use that number and say, okay, we have 1.5 billion fans across the globe, I think it's easy to infer that that naturally means that 80% of the fans are outside of the US. So it means that we need to cater to the interests of the fans, and not just in the US, but outside of the US as well, right? So we've come up with ways of appealing to them, right? A couple of years ago, we launched this notion of a product or a feature that we call NBA ID. Like every fan that interacts with our content or registers on League Pass is assigned what we call NBA ID. And our objective is to, of course, we wanted to use it for transaction elements, right? We want you to come to the site, buy a subscription or purchase a ticket or buy merch. And we want to create that sense of transactional loyalty, right? So the transaction loyalty is super important. But we actually want to go beyond transaction loyalty into emotional loyalty. So the difference between, at least the way we look at it in terms of between transaction loyalty and emotional loyalty is, we want to reward you, Vishal, for being Vishal and logging onto the app and watching a game. And if you do this 3 times a month, maybe you'll get a sticker or a reward that's meaningful to you. It's not necessarily a transaction in that monetary transaction, but it's a reward for you being a fan and coming onto the platform and doing something. So, and we believe that when you make the leap from transactional loyalty to emotional loyalty, it leads to advocacy, because we're now going to get excited about it and we're going to broadcast this to your friends, and that advocacy is going to amplify our family. So that's sort of the connections or that's the way we approach fan engagement, right? And there are various vehicles of doing that, right? Of course, when you go onto the app, there is a For You section of the League Pass, where you're actually going to get custom content based on your implicit and explicit preferences, right? And that's so that you can actually continue to engage with the content that's really meaningful to you. We learn about you based on your interaction with the content. And hopefully we're using that feedback to create more and more delightful experiences every time you come into the app or engage with NBA.
So now if you'll indulge me, this is, I'm wearing my other hat for my research, or at least what I used to do. So NBA has moved to a hybrid cloud infrastructure. What was the thinking and what was the results have been?
Sure. So it's a very recent and deliberate phenomenon, right? In terms of so by the way, this is actually this month marks my 7th year with the NBA. So it's been a fantastic journey. So when I started at the NBA, we were highly virtualized in the base. We were hyper-converged architecture, using virtualization tools, just like a lot of other traditional companies were doing, but it was all on-prem. We realized very quickly that around the rest of the world that the cloud is where it's at, and that's where we need to be able to scale, to be able to use bleeding edge and cutting edge technology that's coming out. So we're like, okay, you know what? If we are an innovative company, we've got strong push for innovation and the innovative genes in our DNA. And we need to push the envelope in terms of delivering these experiences to fans, and we want to do that quickly. And we knew that the cloud was, we provided a pathway for us to be able to do that. We struck a partnership with Microsoft, and we went on a massive effort to not only just rebuild our LeadPass app in the cloud, but essentially we took about 400 to 500 internal applications, the applications, and migrated them to the cloud. Now your question is, what is the challenges? It wasn't easy. I mean, I don't think you can get anyone excited when you say application migration. But it was creating those little wins, right? It's like, I mean, there was a lot of, it was a hard grind. But I think at the end of the day, making sure that the team actually realized why we were doing this, and the eventual ease of maintenance that would come with migrating applications we give to the cloud, right? Patching, for instance, again, you know, if nobody wants to get that patch update on your computer, but it's super important, and you've got to make sure that it's done, it's done very regularly. You don't have to worry about that, at least for a cloud-based apps, right? Because our cloud partners are taking care of it. So these are, and you know, having standards for deployments, right? You know, making sure that the right pipelines are in place, can be able to pull requests from your code repositories, package them, go through a set of unit tests, and then push them out to production. That tooling and instrumentation and the capabilities that are evolving and available in the cloud is super useful. So those are the kind of things that I think are the benefits. Plus innovation, right? I mean, we are able to scale up products very quickly. We're able to experiment very quickly with new products. And we're able to shut them down without too much of a capital expense write-off if the product is not successful. All of these are good things, right? I think that ease of experimentation, ease to scale up, and if something works, and if we think that it's more cost effective to put it back into our data center, the hybrid cloud environment gives us the ability to do that. Maybe the biggest challenge, which we have actually become more mature at now, and I won't say we are there all the way yet, is cost management, right? As everybody knows, essentially what you're doing with the cloud is giving an Uber to the cloud to everybody across the company, right? Which means that everybody can spin up instances, and the meter starts to so you know, having the appropriate governance in place to make sure that we are able to do that cost effectively has been a little bit of a learning curve. The first 6 to 8 months, we exceeded our cost expectations, but then we've gone through a very rigorous exercises to make sure that we have the right processes in place to govern costs.
So I think we can open up questions to the audience. So, and then
Hey Krishna, I maintain that you have the best job ever. Hanging out with the players and doing fun stuff. A question regarding you said the 3 buckets of stats that you are generating: nutrition stats, the hustle stats, and core optics. Are all of those done automatically through image and video analysis, or are there any manual tagging, or how are all these stats extracted?
So the video analysis provides the data. At the end of the day, we have folks looking and sifting through the data and building the models on their own to arrive at this stats.
So the data automatically extracted?
Yes, yes.
As in video?
Yes, the video analysis and the extraction of the data points from the videos is done automatically, but the analysis, there's a human element there. And you know, you could argue that we'll get to a point where we can have something like GenAI to help do that. We're not there yet, and quite frankly, there's for at least specialized aspects of it. I'll give you an example, right? Does anybody know what a dime means in basketball? It's a pass that leads to an assist. AI needs to learn, right? So it's like these kind of nuances that we need to train AI to be able to interpret so that we can actually eventually get to that nirvana where Gen AI is actually deriving this information for us.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Bhagatullah, Professor Mishra. I'm Karthik. I had a question. You guys are cricket fans. You know in the World Cup about video formats, what we were talking about earlier. Both the ODIs and the T20 World Cup, we had Disney Plus doing vertical formats. I was completely against it initially, but when I watched it, I absolutely loved it. Now I know the NBA, if I'm not mistaken, did this a few years ago with ESPN, and I think it's there on the NBA Pass as well, 2 highlights for social platforms. What's the response like in a sport like basketball? Because when I picture sports, and I thought this for cricket as well, it's played on a horizontal canvas. It's tough vertically, but I loved it, the way they put it up, Disney Plus.
So great question. I think we rolled out the NBA before the ICC did. And the folks at the ICC are good friends of mine as well. So they chatted with us before they implemented and they looked at our results. Our results have been fantastic. If you think about it, it gives you a perspective that is unique, that you feel like you're immersed in the game to some degree, or to the degree possible in a 2D device like a phone, right? So I think that's what the USP for that product was. And the results have been fantastic. I think our fans really like that format. And we see that in the way they engage with highlight segments, specifically in the vertical video formats. And yeah, that's a great question. And my answer is, it's been working out great. Is that the end game? Who knows, right? I mean, if you have another form factor, like Vishal and I were talking about the Apple Vision Pro, right? I mean, that's still an expensive device. We do have a presence on that platform as well. And the idea here is to be an innovator and be present on these platforms as they're emerging, so that when they do get to the right price point, if you will, and when you have fans using those platforms, they're already there for them to consume that.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Krishna. Hi, Vishal. My name's Harn. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to talk about this. I'm a big Toronto Raptors fan. So yeah, it's really cool just hearing about this. My question was, and this is directed towards you, Krishna. Working in the NBA, I was wondering, like, with tech and AI, is there any like specific nuances that you see working in the NBA compared that you don't really see like working in other companies and other industries?
Firstly, shout out to the Raptors, right? I always enjoy going to what they call Jurassic Park, I guess, right? So it always somehow that means anyway. Nuances. I can speak just for myself, right? As you probably. As it's probably evident from this conversation, right? I'm excited about 3 things. I love sports, I love media, I love tech. And there are few organizations that combine all 3 as the NBA does. And that's what excites me about working for the NBA, right?
What's the cause and what's the?
Because
you are there or?
No, I mean, I came to the NBA because I think it combined all 3, or give me the canvas to combine. That's the way I look at it.
Hey, I'm Arvind, and I have a question. Sorry,
No, fine, go ahead.
So you talked about being able to automate or check for goaltending in the way that we do LBWs and runouts and third umpire stuff in cricket. Do you see a future where we automate those calls for goaltending, but also with the skeletal imaging and all of that for carries or fouls and body contact and things like that? With sports like baseball testing out automated strike zones and things like that, is that in the future? And do you believe the limitations of it, the resistance to it will be a technological thing or something with players not wanting that to happen?
There are efforts are underway to automate as much as possible, right? Are we there yet? No. I do think we'll get to a point where the tech will provide the information that's necessary and sufficient to make those calls. The question is whether it's going to gain adoption and approval of the Players Association and the folks that run basketball operations at the NBA, right? So in my remit, I can tell you about what the technology can offer, and I do think the technology can get there to deterministically make a call. That is arguably more accurate than a human call for goal landing, right? Because if you actually deterministically say that the ball was at its apex at this point, and this is where the player was, that gives you the necessary and sufficient information that you need to make the call. Adoption is another question, and that's a question of, the more and more data points that you can get, it can lead to adoption.
Krishna, thank you for insightful comments. One quick question about certain aspects of creating models on the game in progression. Right, so basketball is essentially about strategy, and strategy is often driven into patterns that happen on the court, right? So you can take the game data and analyze it and train AI model and try to predict what opposing coach may be trying to do as the game progresses, right? There is a certain kind of advantage that can bring if you are the coach of an opposing team, right? Are there any resistances that you're observing from teams for providing subject matter knowledge, essentially coaches and players participating in doing this kind of modeling, right? Because it has a double-edged sword. It benefits you, but it also can hurt you, right? And historically, heuristic form of that has existed in, as we know, certain tricks that Patriots played in the NFL, right? So you can take it to the next level with AI and machine learning, right? Where does it borderline get into legal realm where you have to positively stop it? You can't do this with my data, kind of a legal requirement that the league has to enforce, right?
Great question, by the way. The way I look at it is all of the stats and the plays, right, is public data at this point, right? So it's not like if you watched a game on TV or you've collected data through the cameras that you have deployed in the arenas, the data is the data. There's not much more to it, right? There's not, and you can do what you want with the data that you are seeing or observing. So we haven't, I want to say, seen a resistance to that because this is not like a violation of IP, if you will. It's the analysis, it's the consumption and the analysis of the data to come up with a play that can potentially, be relevant against it. I think fundamentally that could be controversial if we had like an army of, again, with my Elon Musk hat on, right? Robots playing basketball using some kind of deep mind technology, like chess, right? I think that could be a scenario where this could be an ethical issue, but I don't think we're there.
There is this notion of spirit as a game, right? And then you are bringing so much machine into the game that the strategizing portion that is typically brain driven is not taken over by automation piece and
we're not there yet. I mean, I'll be very honest with you. I don't, we're not there yet. I think we're a few years off. I think the human element is going to be super important because at the end of the day, the machine can only suggest. It's up to the players to execute. So that's where the human element is going to be super important, not with robots.
So you have time for one last question because I know
Yeah.
you have a hard constraint to leave. Okay, we'll take one last question and then. Is that?
Very quick question. The intangible stats, that you're using with the camera stats with the millions of points on it, are you providing that to the coaches and to the team live during the game?
Post game, I mean, in some cases, as the game is progressing, at the end of the day, the latency is the time required to process the data and interpret it as the stats and then send them back. Right? So definitely post game, and the nirvana is to be able to do that processing almost, on the fly, and capture it and broadcast, right? That would be great if we can actually provide that data.
And not
to the
yet.
fans. Not, so that's the goal, right? We want to get to a point where we are. And by the way, that has implications beyond just the fan engagement, right? Even as we get into stuff like betting, for instance, right? These are amazing stats that can be available to increase engagement through stuff like betting for the fans.
Thanks for listening again. I know the fans will run now, you have a meeting, so. Do you want to get a